First story. I favor my daughter because I only get her once a month. So I grounded my ungrateful son and took away his allowance for breaking his old iPad, but paid for repairs when my daughter played catch and throw with her new iPhone and broke it. Now my entitled son told his stepsister that I don't love him. My daughter left me, and I regret everything. I'm a father to 2 kids, a 17-year-old daughter from my previous marriage and an 8-year-old son from my current one. My daughter lives with my ex-wife, who moved across the country 3 years ago, so I only get to see my daughter once every other month, sometimes less. My son lives with me and my wife full-time. To get this out of the way early, I carry a lot of guilt about the distance between me and my daughter. I missed a lot after the divorce, and I'll admit that I sometimes overcorrect when it comes to her. If she needs something or wants help, I jump at the chance to provide it, mostly because I don't get many chances to be a present father to her anymore. She's also very sensitive. Not in a dramatic or manipulative way, just emotionally fragile. She gets anxious easily and takes things very personally, so I've always had to handle conversations with her carefully, especially over the phone. I've learned to be gentle, patient, and very reassuring when she's upset because she doesn't cope well with criticism or disappointment. I don't say that to bash her, she's been through a lot. My son, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He's loud, energetic, stubborn, and tends to talk back when he feels something is unfair. He also has some motor skill delays, which we've been working on with his doctor and in therapy. He's a good kid overall, funny, outgoing, curious, but he's clumsy and rough with his stuff. He's broken or damaged a lot of his toys and electronics over the years, mostly from not paying attention or just being careless. I'm not going to pretend I treat them exactly the same. The relationships are completely different. I have day-to-day authority over my son and have to actively parent him discipline, structure, school, bedtime, everything. With my daughter, my role is limited and long distance, so the dynamic is more fragile. And I try to keep our interactions positive, so she'll keep wanting to talk to me and visit. Now to the issue. About a month ago, my daughter called me crying because she dropped her iPhone 1 I'd bought her just a few weeks earlier as an early birthday present. Apparently, she and a friend were messing around, and the friend tossed the phone to her, and she fumbled the catch, and it hit concrete. The screen cracked badly, and the back was busted too. I told her it was okay. These things happen. She was clearly panicked, probably expecting me to be angry. I reassured her, told her not to worry, and asked her to take it to a shop. She found one, and I sent her the money to cover the repair cost that same day. I also reminded her to be more careful, but I didn't make a big deal out of it. In my mind, it was an accident, and I don't get many chances to be there for her, so this was one of the few things I could do. Fast forward a week, and my son comes to me saying his iPad won't charge. This is a device he's had for over 2 years now, and it's been beaten up pretty badly. We've had to replace the case twice because he kept dropping it, and he's already lost one of the styluses. Turns out the charging port was shot loose and not holding the cable, which the repair guy said was likely from rough use or bending the cord while plugged in. When my son told me about it, I was immediately annoyed, not because I expected it to last forever, but because he's been warned before about yanking the cord or shoving the charger in the wrong way. I told him this one was on him, and I wasn't going to rush to fix it. I said he'd need to use some of his allowance money to help cover the repair, and that we'd hold off on getting it fixed for a while. I added that maybe it would help him be more careful with his stuff going forward. He didn't like that answer and started pushing back, saying it wasn't fair, that it wasn't completely his fault, and that I'd just fixed his sister's phone. I told him that was different, and when he kept arguing, I ended up grounding him for talking back. Initially for 2 weeks, but in reality, I only enforced it for 1 week before letting it slide because he calmed down. That's where my wife jumped in. She was pissed. She said I was being completely unfair, soft on my daughter, harsh on my son, and that if anything it should be the other way around given their ages. She pointed out that my daughter broke a brand new phone a month into having it because she was screwing around with her friend, while our son had used his iPad daily for over 2 years before anything went wrong. And on top of that, he has motor skill issues that make handling things like chargers and cords more difficult. I told her it wasn't about the device or how long they'd had it. It was about the circumstances and the relationship. My daughter is across the country. I barely get to do anything for her. She asked for help, and I helped. Our son is here every day. I'm constantly doing stuff for him. It's not like I'm ignoring him or not providing. She didn't accept that. Said I was clearly playing favorites, and that our son notices. That part stung, because I honestly didn't think it was coming across that way. But when she said that, it hit me that this wasn't the first time she's called me out over how I handle both kids. A few months back, there was a situation where our son spilt juice on the carpet, and I snapped at him. My wife pulled me aside and said I was way too harsh, that I barked at him before even asking what happened. I brushed it off at the time, chalked it up to being tired and stressed. But now she's saying it's a pattern that I'm quicker to discipline him and slower to give him the benefit of the doubt, while I walk on eggshells around my daughter and hand out money or gifts when she makes a mistake. And maybe she's not entirely wrong. But again, I don't think it's favoritism. It's different kids, different situations, and different parenting dynamics. Anyway, after this most recent thing with the iPad, my wife sat me down and told me flat out that I dropped the ball, that I handled it wrong, that I let my guilt about my daughter drive my parenting decisions, and that our son ended up being punished harder for something less careless than what my daughter did. And to her, what really bothered her was that I didn't even hesitate when it came to my daughter. She said I sounded calm, patient, and even warm on the phone when my daughter called. But when our son came to me, she said I jumped straight to frustration, talked to him like he should have known better, and then punished him for reacting emotionally, which she pointed out is exactly what I don't do with my daughter. She asked me flat out, if your daughter had worn out her charging port from being careless, would you have still made her pay to fix it herself? Would you have grounded her if she talked back when she was upset? The honest answer? No, probably not. But to me, it's not about playing favorites. I just handle them differently because I have to. I get what she's saying, though. The optics are bad. My daughter breaks something expensive a month into owning it, while playing around with her friend, and I cover it, no questions asked. My son wears down an older iPad that's been through hell, and I basically tell him, too bad, learn from it. He reacts like an 8-year-old would, angry, loud, defensive, and I ground him. It does look one-sided. She also reminded me that our son knows he's clumsy. He already gets frustrated with himself over his delays. He gets embarrassed when other kids are better at certain things. And apparently, he'd been extra quiet for a few days after the iPad incident. I didn't even notice because I was busy with work and didn't really think twice about it. She told me that during that week I grounded him. He told her, I guess I have to be perfect because Dad already likes her more. That one hit hard. But even after hearing that, I still don't feel like I handled things wrong in the moment. I am more strict with him because I can be. I'm his full-time parent. I'm there every day. I don't have to be delicate with him to keep the peace. I'm teaching him to be responsible now so he doesn't grow up expecting people to clean up his messes. My daughter already resents that I'm not around. If I tell her, tough luck, fix it yourself, I risk pushing her away more. It's not ideal, but that's the reality. My wife says I'm setting a precedent. That my daughter will always get grace because I feel guilty, and our son will always get lectures because he's the one who has to deal with my full parenting load. And she's not wrong about that either. But again, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all way to parent two kids in completely different situations. What frustrates me is that people always assume equal means fair. But what's fair isn't always 50-50. My daughter doesn't get the bedtime stories, the school pickup, or the silly Saturday mornings. She gets short FaceTimes and awkward weekend visits every few months. If I can make her life easier in those little moments, I will. My son gets everything else. Every birthday party, every scraped knee, every maths assignment, every single, Dad, watch this. And yes, he also gets my discipline and my rules. That doesn't mean I love her more. It means I'm trying to balance two very different worlds. One where I'm mostly absent and trying to stay connected, and one where I'm always present and trying to guide him into becoming someone who takes responsibility for himself. But now I'm second-guessing if maybe I've been too rigid with my son. I didn't even ask if it was really his fault. I assumed it was because of how he usually handles his stuff. I didn't stop to consider that maybe the port was just worn out. I didn't give him space to be upset. I just jumped to the consequence. I also didn't check in afterwards. I let the grounding quietly end and moved on. I didn't ask how he was feeling, if he felt it was fair, or if he learned anything. I just treated it like case closed. And maybe that's part of the problem. I'm expecting him to just deal with things because he's here and accessible. Because I can. My wife's been bringing up other stuff now too. Like how I always ask my daughter if she's okay when she sounds off on the phone. But with our son, I mostly only ask if he's done his homework or cleaned up his room. She says I don't make space for his emotions the way I do for hers. That I assume he's fine unless he's acting out. And even then, I go straight to consequences instead of figuring out what's going on underneath. And now I'm looking back at how often I've brushed off his complaints, told him to deal with it, or treated his emotions like something to shut down instead of understand. That part's hard to admit, because I know what it's like to have a dad who just lectures and doesn't listen. I didn't want to be that guy. But I also know that if I don't push him to be better now, I'll regret it later. And part of me still feels like I handled the iPad thing how I should have. He's got to learn. If I keep replacing stuff he breaks without any accountability, what message does that send? The same goes for talking back. He needs to understand that mouthing off when you don't like a rule doesn't make the rule disappear. My wife thinks I should have fixed the iPad and just had a conversation about taking better care of things. That he's 8. That it's not the same as a teenager breaking a phone. And that maybe I'm the one who needs to adjust my expectations. That if I want him to talk to me about things in the future, I need to make it feel safe to do that. Right now, she says, it feels like he has to earn being treated kindly. That stung too. So here I am. I still don't think I was wrong to treat the two situations differently, because I still believe they are different. But maybe I dropped the ball in how I talked to my son. Maybe I missed a chance to be more balanced. Or maybe I'm right, and it's just hard to see it when you're inside the mess. So, Reddit, Ada, comments. Comment 1. YTA. You're not handling each kid differently based on their needs. You're overcompensating for guilt with one and offloading your full parenting frustrations onto the other. This reads like you're using your son as your emotional punching bag because you can't afford to mess up with your daughter. Your son is 8. He has motor skill delays. He's not some fully autonomous, self-aware adult who intentionally broke the iPad. He was trying, probably the only way he knows how. Meanwhile, your 17-year-old daughter broke a brand new phone while effing around with a friend and got zero consequences, just hugs, money, and soft words. And the worst part? Your son notices. He feels it. He's not dumb. He knows you handle him differently. And you're teaching him that love from you is conditional on whether or not he makes your life harder that day. You're the adult. Your trauma, guilt, and insecurities aren't your kid's burden. But you've made it his. Apologize to your son and fix the damn iPad. Do better. Comment 2. Holy SHT. This whole post is just a giant. I parent based on vibes and guilt. You know you're biased. You even admit your daughter can't be pushed or challenged, so she gets a pass. Meanwhile, your son, who is literally 8 and has delays, gets grounded for reacting to blatant favoritism. But also, your daughter sucks a little too. She's 17 and had a brand new phone for a few weeks before breaking it during some dumb, throw it to me moment. That's careless as hell. You rewarded it. Let's call it what it is. And your son has to learn a lesson from slowly wearing out a port after years of use. You're parenting from your own guilt, not from logic or fairness. It's inconsistent, and inconsistency breeds resentment. Not just from your son eventually, from both kids. Your wife is the only one here seeing this for what it is. You're putting one kid on a pedestal and using the other to test your version of real parenting. And that's FED. Fix the iPad. Say sorry. Not just to your son, but to your wife too. She's the only adult acting like one. Update. It's been a couple of months since I posted. I didn't reply to many comments, but I read them. Some of the replies hit harder than I expected, especially the ones that talked about emotional favoritism and how inconsistent parenting can mess up both kids, even the one who seems to be getting the better deal. I didn't plan to write an update, but things escalated, and I owe it to everyone, and maybe to myself, to admit how bad it actually got. After the iPad situation, things settled down on the surface, but only because I didn't notice what was happening under it. My wife did. She kept saying our son had been quieter, more withdrawn, and less excited about things he usually loves. I brushed it off as him still being upset about the punishment. I figured he'd get over it. Then my daughter came to visit. Usually, my son is all over her when she's in town. They've had a good relationship until now. She reads to him, watches cartoons, and plays little games. But this time, he avoided her. Barely said a word. When she asked if he wanted to play with her, he said, "No, you're Dad's favorite." She asked what he meant, and that's when he said, right in front of her and my wife, "Dad doesn't love me like he loves you. I'm just the kid who lives here." My daughter went pale. My wife looked like she'd been slapped. I tried to step in and tell him that wasn't true, but he just looked at me and said, "You only talk to me when I break something." Then he left the room. That moment broke something open. I can't pretend it didn't happen. Later that night, my daughter pulled me aside. She told me she doesn't like the way I talk to her. She said I always sound scared or careful, like I'm handling glass. That it doesn't feel like real love, it feels like guilt. She said she can't tell if I actually care, or if I just don't want her to hate me. She cried while saying it. I always thought I was doing right by her, being soft so she wouldn't feel abandoned. But now she felt like a project, like someone I was trying not to lose, rather than someone I truly saw. My wife asked if we'd consider family counseling. I agreed because I thought it'd help my son process things. What I didn't expect was how quickly the therapist saw through me. In one session, the therapist asked my son what it feels like when I'm mad. He didn't even hesitate. It feels like he wants me to go away. Then he said something that knocked the air out of me. When I mess up, I'm the bad kid. When she messes up, it's just a mistake. He wasn't crying. He was calm, detached. Like it was something he'd said to himself so many times. It just became a fact. In a later session, the therapist asked my daughter how she sees our dynamic. She said she used to think it was nice that I gave her what she needed, but now it just makes her feel guilty. She said she hates that she's the reason her brother feels unloved. That when he pulled away from her, she realized she was the thing he resented. She cried again. My son didn't move. My wife, who'd been holding it together through all of this, finally broke. She said she'd been trying to tell me for years that I was harder on our son than I realized, and I always brushed her off. She said she's tired of protecting both kids from my guilt. She said it's not her job anymore. I didn't even try to defend myself. I couldn't. I saw it all clearly. Every time I minimized his feelings. Every time I snapped because I was tired, and used him as the easy target because he'd bounce back faster. Every time I looked at my daughter, it was like a reminder of my failures instead of a teenager with her own flaws and limits. And worst of all, I realized I didn't even put the worst parts in my original post. I downplayed it. Edited it to sound more balanced than it was. I left out the times I told my son to stop crying over small things. The times I told him to be a man when he was barely 6. The way I rarely apologized even when I knew I went too far. I left all that out because I didn't want to look like the bad guy even to strangers on the internet. So here it is, I F it up. Not in a one-time, fix it with an apology way. I created a pattern. I made my daughter feel like a symbol instead of a person. I made my son feel like a burden. And I made my wife feel like she was raising a child with a child. I've apologized to all of them. My daughter is still talking to me, but she said she needs space to figure out how she feels about me. My son accepted my apology, but keeps his distance. My wife is still here, but she told me she's not sure if she sees a future if things don't change and stay changed. I've started individual therapy now. Not to fix things quickly, but because I realize I have years of unpacking to do. I thought guilt was enough to prove love. It's not. It's just another excuse to avoid accountability. So yeah, a lot of this can't be undone. But I'm trying to be better. Not for Reddit. Not to look good just because I don't want to be the reason both of my kids feel unloved in different ways. Thanks to those who called it like it was. I needed it more than I thought. Comments. Comment 1. I'll give you credit for owning your SHT. Most parents who screw up this badly would have doubled down or hidden behind excuses. That said, you don't get points for realizing it after your kid tells his sister, "Dad doesn't love me." You basically weaponized your guilt. You treated your daughter like a fragile glass souvenir, and your son like a crash dummy to practice discipline on. That's not different parenting styles. That's projecting your divorce trauma onto 2 innocent kids. What I like about your update is you're not pretending it's fixable overnight. That's the first honest thing you've probably done for your family in years. Keep therapy going, but don't expect forgiveness to be your finish line. Your son is 8. Those are the years that form the voice in his head about his own worth. You're going to have to fight like hell to replace that voice with something better, and it's going to take years, not a few therapy sessions and a teary apology. You're not beyond redemption, but you are squarely the arsehole who did damage. Start there and stay there until your actions prove otherwise. Comment 2. I'm reading this as someone who's been the wife watching it happen, and damn, your wife deserves a medal. You had blinders on for years, and she's been trying to hold that house together with duct tape and patience. You weren't just hurting your son. You were putting your wife in a no-win position. Every time you overpunished him, she had to be the one to quietly undo the emotional damage so he'd still feel safe. Every time you overcoddled your daughter, she had to watch you reenact your guilt while knowing exactly how it was going to land later. That kind of emotional labor eats a person alive. And now you're realizing that, yeah, she doesn't trust that you'll change. Because from her view, she's heard every apology before the next cycle starts again. It's not that she doesn't believe you mean it. She just doesn't believe you'll maintain it. If you want to prove her wrong, don't grandstand with big gestures. Show consistency. Show her that when your son messes up next time, you don't default to anger. Show her that when your daughter calls, you don't treat her like she might shatter if she hears the word no. You've broken trust in 3 directions. The only way back is boring, daily, repeatable effort, the kind that doesn't look dramatic, but builds safety again. Stick with therapy, stay humble, and maybe you'll earn your way out of being the arsey hole eventually. Second story. My husband's kids came back and demanded their rooms back, but I had repurposed it and given it to my child, so I told them they needed to share rooms. They refused, so I tried to move out, and my husband kicked his kids out. I love my husband. My husband has 2 kids from a previous relationship who are F20 and M23. When we married, they had already moved out of our house. We have a baby together, M1, who now sleeps in his own room, which is my stepdaughter's old room that we turned into a baby room. Now all of a sudden, they both want to move back in. Stepson lost her job and can't afford her house anymore. Stepson is done with college and recently moved back to our city. I said they are both welcome back, but they have to share their stepson's room. There is no other room to put the baby's stuff, and I'm not going to put it all in storage or something like that. That's baby's room now. They are adults, and they moved out, and I wasn't going to keep the rooms empty for them. Now they are angry and saying I'm an arsehole. Comments. Commenter 1. Why are you having to be the bad guy? It seems like your husband's problem to solve. NTA. OP. Because they keep arguing with me while he is not around. He has made it clear that either they take that one room that is given to them, or they can just leave. Commenter 2. Start turning a recorder on your phone when your husband is not around and the stepkids are. Make sure they do not notice. Then show your husband how they treat you when he is not around. Maybe he will realize they should not move back in. Maybe they can share a cheap apartment. OP. I don't need to. He believes me over anyone. I just don't want to be that kind of stepmom. If I told him they are bothering me, he wouldn't let them stay here at all. Commenter 3. Does your home have a basement? Where is your husband in this equation? OP. It has an unfinished basement that needs a lot of work done and will cost us a lot. We have a baby. It's expensive. We don't have extra money to just finish the basement for them. He agrees with me. Commenter 4. Just curious. But where do they suggest the baby be? I with you and your husband. Would they rather share a room with a baby? Are they suggesting the baby stay in the unfinished basement? If they do not want to share a room, they can get an apartment together. One could not move in, or one of them can clear a spot in the basement for themselves. Babies need a room. They may be tiny, but they come with lots of stuff. NTA. I hope they bugger off and give you some peace. OP. They think the baby should be with me and my husband. Downvoted commenter. YTA. But because of how you said it, not because of the situation. You could have handled that more sensitively, or let that discussion happen between their father and them instead of coming from you. Yes, it makes sense that one of the rooms is for the baby. They're probably just mad about the situation. You should talk to your husband about your response and ways to cool things off before continuing to discuss with your stepchildren. OP. I don't discuss with them. They keep discussing it with me when my husband isn't around. Why don't the stepchildren stay with their mother? OP. She has a much smaller house than us. They are uncomfortable there. OP's stepchildren can move in and refinish the basement themselves. OP. They don't have the money either, and also it needs to be temporary. I don't want 30-year-old adults living in my basement. Commenter 5. The older kids will remember this forever. Your husband is a full-grown adult who chose to have a second family at his age. OP. He is 45. Most people his age get married for the first time. He is allowed to have a life. They are also fully grown adults. Commenter 6. And how old are you? OP. I'm 31. How does it affect your judgment? Explain in detail, please. Update. I decided to just tell my husband everything they have been saying. I didn't want to say something originally because I didn't want to cause problems between them. But they are old enough to know exactly what they are doing, so they should also be prepared for the consequences. I'm going through a lot lately. I'm still struggling with PPD that just doesn't seem to go away. I told my husband that I will never ask him to choose between me and his kids, but I have to choose between me and his kids, and I choose me. My mental health is important. His kids haven't even moved in, but they are already here all the time, and they keep arguing and nagging and pushing me to my limits. And I can't worry about them sharing a room. I have enough problems already. I told him I'm going to stay in a hotel for a few days, because I need to be away from him and his kids. This includes the little one. I just need a few days off from being a parent. He didn't let me leave and instead took the baby and left. He returned about an hour ago. He had bought some takeout for me. He asked how I'm doing and said the baby is with his sister and is doing well. He gave me the keys he has given his kids and said he took them away, and they can't just walk in ever again and need permission from now on. He said I should have just said something sooner instead of waiting until I got to my breaking point. He is going to help his kids find a cheap apartment and some roommates, and he will help them with rent for a few months until they can afford to pay it themselves. They are not happy, but he is not willing to give them more. He and our baby will stay with his sister for a night or two, so I can get some rest. But if I want them back sooner, I can just call them, and he will return. We are finally going to repurpose our stepson's room as well. It will just be a guest room for now. But he wants to buy some bookshelves as well, so we can have a library too. Well, I guess that's all. Comments. Commenter 1 Ash. You admit you have PPD, and instead of seeking any sort of support, you were going to ditch your baby and your husband. You also have guaranteed his kids want nothing to do with you or their half-sibling. Yeah, they were DCKS, and you're right not to want them there, 100%. But the way you went about it made sure they won't forget. OP. I'm getting help. It doesn't magically go away, especially when you have a history of depression. I can't just take a pill and be cured. I matter too. My therapist says there is nothing wrong with spending some time alone without my husband, or even my baby. Commenter 2. I'm very glad your husband stood up for you and baby. Quite frankly, adult kids need to understand they can't keep running home every time life gets hard. OP. Yeah, thanks. I'm lucky to have him. Commenter 3. Well done. You've achieved your aim of alienating your husband from his kids. A 20-year-old who lost her job, and a 23-year-old who has just finished college. I notice you didn't answer the question on your previous thread about who paid for the house you live in, or how long you've been married. OP. I assure you, my stepkids didn't pay for the house. And being married for a short time doesn't make me less entitled to my own house or less of a wife. Commenter 4. You could have a bit of sympathy for them. It's tough to not be able to go back to your childhood home because your father married a much younger woman. You're within your rights, but you could have a bit more grace. OP. Our means mine and his. So saying mine is not wrong. If I say I took my child somewhere, does it mean my child is no longer my husband's child? You are grasping at straws. No one is asking them to disappear, but I can't have arguments every day at my house. It's not healthy for anyone. Of course it is nice. For a night or two. And last time I asked my husband, he and the baby were staying in the guest room together, not demanding 2 bedrooms. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.